Good day. This is Dr. Bryson, your nerdy criminal justice professor, with another video on criminal profiling. And in this video, we're going to talk about interpreting offender motive. Now, let me give you just a little caveat. I'm a clinically certified sex offender treatment specialist and have specialized in sex offenders and sexual offending behavior for well over going on 25 years specifically, but I started working with them under other folks even earlier than that. So I actually worked with sexual offenders in jail ministry as far back as 1984. Yes, that's 42 years ago. So I would like to think I know a thing or two about sex offenders. Turvey identifies different behavioral motivations. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about this whole scheme. So, first, he identifies a difference between motive versus intent. Motive is why I do something. Intent is, or what motivates me to do it. Intent is what I intend to accomplish. So my motive may be financial gain, but my intent is to take someone's life. So it's important to understand those differences. So if you go to page 523, he talks about the behavioral motivation typology. So he lists 6 on that page. And then he gives you over the next few pages, beginning on page 524, almost what we could consider a diagnostic criteria of each one of them. So let's look at these. First, he says power reassurance, that is compensatory. So think about the compensatory rapist. Power reassurance crime scene behaviors include those that are intended to restore the offender's self-confidence or self-worth through the use of low aggression means. Okay? These behaviors suggest a lack of confidence and a sense of personal inadequacy on the part of the offender. So these are offenders who will basically hide their identity, cover their face, because it gives them a sense of who they are, a sense of ego strength that they don't have otherwise. Now, this is interesting. They will attempt foreplay with their victims. Most rapists don't do that, but some do. They use minimal force, physical force, okay, but the whole idea is to compensate for a feeling of inadequacy. Now, there's the power assertive, and their self-worth is moderate to high in aggressive means. Okay, so they're trying to assert their self-worth through moderate high to aggressive to very aggressive means. So the more they can harm someone else, the better they feel about themselves. There is almost a sadistic element to this. Well, there is a sadistic element to this, but not all power assertive are sadists. Some are. And then the anger retaliatory. So they're angry for some reason. So they may feel rejected by some woman. They might have just been dumped at the altar, and they need to get revenge on all women for what this woman has done to them. So they may start to engage in serial rape. So that's the anger retaliatory. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but the sadistic one is the one that truly gets pleasure by causing pain. And this doesn't necessarily bump their self-worth at all. but they gain pleasure by causing pain. So there is the sexual sadist and the plain sadist. A plain sadist is someone who derives pleasure simply on causing pain to other people. It's not necessarily sexual pleasure, just pleasure. Many of the Nazis that committed the tortures during the Holocaust were sadists. Now, there's also the sexual sadist. They derive sexual pleasure, sexual gratification from causing pain, sometimes sexual pain, sometimes non-sexual pain, to other people. Now, the thing about the sexual sadist is that the sexual sadist who actually becomes active, so there's maybe some folks that are internally sexual sadists, but they never act on it. It's always important to understand that there are psychological things that are going on that might be true of criminals, but also non-criminals that never act on it. So internally, this is what's going on. There may be some that have that internally, but realize that it's wrong, feel bad about it, and not act on it. The sexual sadists that act on it, the first time they commit a rape, they might harm the victim pretty bad. The next time they commit a rape, it becomes almost like an addiction. So they're chasing that same high that they got the first time. And so they ramp it up a little bit, and then they ramp it up a little bit, and eventually a victim dies. Well, once a victim dies, for those individuals, from that point forward, victims have to die. And for many of them, they have to die with more and more torture. It's the addictive nature of this when you couple that with sexual sadism. So it's important to understand these. Please read this chapter. Make sure you understand these. There are going to be questions from this chapter on the final exam. Now, I do want to point something out. In my work with sex offenders, first, I have rarely seen in person, up close, myself, a sexual sadist. I've read about them. We've all read about them. But it's also important to understand that this typology is just that. It's a typology. And typologies rarely work perfectly. When we try to start to put known offenders into one of these places on the typology, we start to find that they might go into more than one. That's the thing about trying to become too specific in typologies like this. So first of all, please understand typologies cannot be proven or disproven. Typologies are simply a way that we define things. So we have a consensus for how we define it. So let's think about this, okay? Typology is at play when we talk about the planets and different bodies in outer space. So we have meteorites, we have meteors, and we have comets. There is more overlap between them than there is difference. But scientists have defined them differently as different things to make them easier to study. Those categories are man-made categories to assist us in study. So I'm sure you all know that Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet from being a planet. Was there scientific research that proved Pluto to be a dwarf planet rather than a full-fledged planet? No. The scientists got together and they looked at Pluto and they said, wait a second. Okay, here's how we define a planet. Here's how we define a dwarf planet. Pluto fits more this definition, the dwarf planet. So they took a vote, and their vote determined that Pluto fit more their definition of a dwarf planet. See, these are categories. They're categories. That's all they are. They're man-made categories that we create for our convenience, for us to help study them. Okay, I am going to leave this lecture at that point with you. Please make sure you get these points. Please make sure you read the chapter, and I will see you next week.